But first tonight, there are strong signs now that Albanese is heading for a major defeat at the federal election. New political polling and the Victorian by-elections are pointing to a shocking loss for Labor. In my view, the best Albanese can hope for, the best, is minority government. But a major loss is a live possibility. In the by-election in the Victorian seat of Werribee on the weekend, there was a massive 16% swing against Labor. In fact, Labor's primary vote in Werribee was the lowest at any Victorian by-election in the state's history. And the Liberals picked up the seat of Paran from the Greens, breaking an 11-year Green streak. The Liberal primary was 36.2% and two-party preferred was 51.6%. The new Liberal MP, Rachel Westaway, said one of the reasons for her win was her focus on rising crime.
People are feeling unsafe. People running down the street of Chapel Street with a machete, to firebombings, to a firebombing of a local synagogue. These are outrageous things that we haven't seen before, in a consistency that we've never seen before, and we've just got to get on top of it.
Well, with homeless tents on Chapel Street and rising crime, inner city Melbourne is becoming kind of like a mini San Francisco. Adam Band's seat of Melbourne covers much the same area as Paran, and with any luck, we'd see him lose his job at the federal election. Now, while Labor didn't run a candidate in the seat, the party does rely on the Greens' preferences in many seats, and it would need the support of the Greens in the case of a hung parliament. Now, the top three issues that saw the Liberals win in this formerly safe Green seat were cost of living, crime, and housing. So, yes, it's a state by-election, but the writing is on the wall for Labor, and thankfully for the Greens as well. There's no question Albanese will be looking at these results and panicking. His ministers on Breakfast TV today certainly indicated that they were worried.
We know that people have been under a lot of cost of living pressure, and that's why we're 100% focused. Well, of course you pay attention, but I think one of the interesting things about this result is that there was a significant drop in the Labor vote. Most of it didn't go to the Liberals.
I think we're known, regardless of what happens in a state by-election, that this election is going to be really close. I think that's pretty clear. We take nothing for granted. We've got to continue to talk and address people's cost of living needs.
And Labor's own former Victorian campaign chief, Kosamaris, said Labor's red wall in Melbourne's western suburbs has now crumbled, and he said it's now a red barbed wire fence.
It is easily the lowest primary vote recorded by the Labor Party in this part of Melbourne, in Victoria's electoral history.
Now, at a federal level, I can tell you Peter Dutton is hoping to pick up 5 seats in Victoria. These include Aston, McEwen, Chisholm, Dunkley and Corangamite. And Dutton also has a chance in both Teal seats of Kooyong and Goldstein. Now, aside from the results on the weekend, there's also Redbridge polling that shows voters in outer suburban seats are turning against the Prime Minister. The survey shows the coalition is ahead of Labor by 51.5% to 48.5% on a 2PP basis. And it shows that Albanese's primary support has dropped to 27% in the suburbs, while Dutton's primary has lifted to 46%. Redbridge director Tony Barry also pointed out that the other big risk for Albanese is Victoria, where he says the bottom is falling out of Labor's vote. Now, the hard truth is that for many Australians, life is much tougher since the Albanese government came to office. Albanese's central attack line against Scott Morrison was that he was to blame for the cost of living crisis. He blamed Morrison for 1 interest rate rise. Yet there's been 12 interest rate rises under the Albanese government. Now, I'm not saying that is entirely the fault of the Albanese government, but Albanese blamed Morrison for the first rate rise, so surely he should now accept responsibility for the 12 since. And in terms of national security, well, life was safe for all of us when Morrison was Prime Minister. And now life in Australia, particularly for the Jewish community, is unrecognisable. We've had dozens of incidents of violent crime in Melbourne and Sydney that premiers and police admit are basically terror incidents, even if the police refuse to technically classify them as such. Now, even as we were horrified as all of this violent crime was unfolding, Albanese government ministers preferred to speak about Islamophobia.
And some of the anti-Semitism and Islamophobia that I have seen is really not in keeping with who we are or who we should aspire to be.
Sorry, so should we turn a blind eye to Islamophobia? Is that what the coalition's saying?
If James Patterson thinks there's no Islamophobia in Australia, he's wrong.
He didn't say that, though. He said that when something happens, it should be enough to just denounce anti-Semitism.
He went on to say that they're not at the same levels.
So with all of this, a crippling cost of living crisis and a devastating national security situation, it's hardly surprising that voters are punishing Albanese. And he deserves every bit of the political backlash that's heading his way.